The Tsar Russia of the 17th century, the village of Devious Dikonka of eastern Ukraine produces bizarre murder cases continuously. The dark night in focal is shown ceaselessly, and the psychic detective unveils the layers of fog behind the crime by chasing the murder through the illusion, a 2-century-long love-hate relationship, through the hands of ghosts to tell you the truth. Hello, everyone. Today, Josie is going to share with you a Russian mystery and fantasy film about powers, crimes, ghosts, wizards, and demons. The beginning. The first part of the Gogol trilogy. Josie's channel is dedicated to discovering and introducing niche movies, dedicated to the unique you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss any updates. 3 robbers picked up a girl in the middle of nowhere. Then a knight appeared. He was a tall man with black horns. The robber was killed with a single cut. The girl thought she had been saved, but a dagger cut the girl's chest, and the knight drained the girl's blood. This is the 3rd murder in Dikonka, all of them young girls. A town that used to be so cozy, rumors are swirling about a series of murders. Witnesses reported seeing a black-robed knight with a fearsome horn around the scene, preying on beautiful young women and draining their blood. For a time, the village panic, above quickly dispatched the famous detective to solve the case. Gogol was originally just an idle poet because the books he published were hardly read. So, in order to sell the books, he spent all the money his noble parents left for him to buy all the books and then burned them as firewood. Later, I found a job as a recorder in the police station by relying on my family's connections. Every time Gogol entered the scene of the murder, he would have an uncontrollable seizure, and then some image of the deceased would come to his mind. He would frantically write and draw in his notebook, leaving strange symbols. The sheriff refuses to fire him because of his kindness, but the detective is surprised to find that the strange symbols point to important clues in many cases. Like the time he drew a volcano, a cross, and toothpaste at a murder scene, and the sheriff couldn't figure it out. However, the detective discovers that the volcano is the name of the dead man's horse, and immediately summons the groom for questioning. From the cross on the groom's body, and from the marks left on the victim's hands, we can confirm that the groom is the real murderer. So the detective took a keen interest in Gogol. One day Gogol saw the woman of his dreams and the shadow of the dark night in his dream. I was awakened by the detective. The detective reminds him that you are still young and have a long way to go. Don't be so depressed. And invited him along to solve the most significant case of his tenure. Gogol heard the interest and followed the detective after a few days of turbulence, back to the small village. The detective took out a scalpel and cut the skin on the girl's chest to open the sternum, then opened the chest with a spreader, and found that the girl apparently had no blood in her body. Gogol were experienced this scene. Before the detective opened his mouth rushed out, he came to the river to wash a face to wake up, but suddenly was galloped behind the horse and cart knocked unconscious, again into the dream. When he woke up, the woman of his dreams was smiling at him, and told Gogol, "Our carriage accidentally hit you, and we brought you back for treatment." Gogol, suddenly dumbfounded, did not think of the dream lover really into the real world. The original she is a manor lord's wife named Lisa. Lisa and his wife warmly entertain Gogol, Lisa because of abdominal discomfort, halfway out of the table. Before leaving, her husband took out a bottle of strange medicine for her. Lisa looks strange upstairs. Faced with this strange atmosphere, Gogol said he should go back. In the woods of the return journey, Gogol unfortunately encountered the dark knight in the legend. He was scared to ride a horse madly to escape. In the dark, unfortunately hit the windmill on the roadside. A blind girl named Oksana came to save him and raised a fire to Gogol warm. Curious, Gogol asked Oksana, "Aren't you afraid of the 3 dead women?" Oksana said there was nothing to be afraid of. There were more than 3 dead. In the middle of the sentence, Gogol fainted again. When he woke up, he was surprised to find himself back in the village hotel, and his bare feet were covered with mud. Gogol tells the detective about his experience. On inquiry with the villagers, the mill had been abandoned for more than 30 years. 30 years ago, the miller's daughter disappeared, the miller hanged himself, and the stepmother left with him. More than a dozen girls are also missing. Detective suspects a connection from 30 years ago. The sheriff was skeptical, because the killer wasn't even born yet. Then Lisa appeared, riding up on a white horse. Gogol couldn't help but be excited, and the two chatted happily under a tree. Lisa told Gogol that she was a fan of Gogol and that she loved his poems. Gogol finally found a bosom friend, not to mention her or his dream lover, and promised Lisa no longer burn his book. This night, Gogol again ineffable ground enters the channeling dream. Oksana the miller girl is here again. She told Gogol that more than 3 girls had been killed, and that the murderer was the innkeeper. Then the murdered girls came out of the darkness, surrounded Gogol, and tore off the innkeeper's arm. Wake up again from the bed of the hotel. Gogol's feet are still covered with sludge. Gogol and detective really found a broken arm next to the mill. What was more surprising was that the woman who owned the hotel was missing an arm. The innkeeper has burst out of a surprising power, suddenly threw the detective on the roof, watching Gogol to be choked to death. Sheriff a shot to solve her. Then in the hotel owner's room, they find a lot of magic props, as well as the scene of each woman's death of strange symbols. Looks like the case was solved. Detectives said the next day will return to St. Petersburg, in Gogol a little lost to return to his residence, but found the Lisa suddenly appeared. It turned out that Lisa knew they were leaving and had come to say goodbye. The two people who cannot be separated. Dry firewood fire is out of control. However, Gogol saw the appearance of Oksana between a bands. However, sleep. Gogol was Oksana. Wake up. She saw the original is the owner of the room on fire, and detective is with the Dark Knight showdown. Gogol on the side, helplessly watching detective so killed. Sheriff thinks Gogol should take the detective's body back to St. Petersburg, but Gogol decided to stay and continue to find the true identity of the Dark Knight. In the morgue, the Dark Knight appeared again. He lifted the shroud of the landlady, waved his hand gently, and she woke up in a dark mist. The landlady told the Dark Knight that everything is Gogol do ghost. He is very unusual, has some mysterious dark power. A fat married woman, her husband just went out with a man to cheat, just want to do something bad. There was a rapid knock on the door. The woman opened the door and looked. There was nothing outside except a red robe on the ground. 2 people were scared out of their wits. At this time, behind the candle unexpectedly extinguished emit green smoke, then the candle out of blood. The red robe was floating in the air, and suddenly a pig's head appeared. The man was so scared that he hit the pillar and fainted, while the woman was scared to death. The next day, the crowd such as Gogol came to murder scene, discovered the sign that Dark Knight leaves. The Gogol epilepsy that sees the sign has a seizure again. The picture fell a big tree in coma. The homonym in Russian is a hoax. Gogol immediately see the clue, and tell the sheriff, this time the murderer is not the Dark Knight, because the symbol of the horse's hoof is inverted, and the Dark Knight only kill young girls. And this married woman is clearly not the Dark Knight's target. It was a parody of a crime, and the murderer was the homeowner, who had taken advantage of his daughter's absence to set up a scheme to kill his unfaithful wife. The sheriff shook his head. It was an unlikely thing for the brawny homeowner, but the sheriff's men soon found the murder weapon and the candle, along with the red robes, under the tub. The sheriff's interrogation is simple and brutal. You killed your wife, and if you don't confess, your son-in-law and daughter will be implicated. The owner was then persuaded to confess, with the sole requirement that he be allowed to attend his daughter's wedding on the autumnal equinox. All was well, as long as the case was closed, and the sheriff readily accepted his request. The sight of Gogol was the scene of the crime was attracted by the candle, finger touched that moment, he felt the Dark Knight and the power of the ghost. Gogol immediately suspects that the case still involves the Dark Knight. Gogol let the doctor dissect the corpse again. Don't look at the doctor, always drink unconsciousness. Dissection is a good hand, however. By dissecting the corpse, the doctor told Gogol that the woman had been scared to death before she was killed. At the same time, the homeowner's daughter suddenly woke up from her dream. These days, her spirit is a little weak, always hears someone calling her. When she was washing clothes, she saw her mother, who had turned into a ghost, appearing in the river. The daughter carefully got out of bed, a pair of big hands suddenly stretched out from under the bed. Mother's ghost again. The woman was scared and fled. She bumped into Gogol and Dark Knight in the forest, but everything has no danger, until they met the fiancé of the daughter. Gogol without accident was beaten by the other side, he was plunged into the dreamland. Suddenly, in the middle of the crowd, Oksana appeared in the middle of the road, looking at Gogol lovingly. At once all the passers-by lined up on either side, revealing their true faces, some with the tentacles of deadful fish, others with the shapes of evil spirits. Oksana told Gogol that you were born with the ability to see not only the human world but also the ghost world. You are one of them, and I can lead you to the dark night. In exchange for leaving Lisa. Gogol is in the period of love, cannot give up Lisa, two people parted on bad terms. Gogol refused to give up the candle to the doctor to identify. The doctor told Gogol that this was not a normal candle with opium and copper oxide in it, and that when the temperature reached the point of burning, it would emit smoke and give rise to visions of horrible ghosts. Turns out the candle was the hallucinogens, and the homeowner's daughter was the real killer. When her daughter and son-in-law found out, they fled into the forest. Gogol and the sheriff followed with their own men. The daughter plans to escape with her son-in-law in a boat, but when the boat reaches the river, the son-in-law suddenly turns into a ghost. The real son-in-law was trapped on shore by a tree root. The mother's ghost had come for revenge, to give her daughter to the dark night. In the forest, the ghost caught Gogol line, the ghost cast spells, throwing everyone in the air in circles. The doctor suddenly lit a candle, which dispelled the ghost's spell. At the same time, under the influence of the candle, the ghost sees Gogol's real appearance, a horrible dark devil. The ghost is terrified and immediately turns into a plume of smoke and runs away. At dawn, the people in the boat by the river saw the owner of the dead daughter, the same dagger inserted in the chest, also was drained of blood, a huge symbol carved in the grass, swearing that this is another masterpiece of the Dark Knight. Back to the hotel, Gogol received a box detective, but just a touch of the box pull ring, Gogol will trigger the ability of channeling again. In the vision, he is in a terrible cave, the walls are inlaid with all kinds of bloody dead, covered in blood. Lisa standing at the end of the cave, the Dark Knight behind her. Gogol wakes up, thinking that the Dark Knight must be targeting Lisa, and Oksana in the mirror flashes out of sight. At the same time, a familiar figure appears in the village entrance, is actually burned to death. Detective. This is the beginning of Gogol's trilogy. The film leads to the Dark Knight through a series of murders. At the end of the first film, Gogol and the detective first find the murderer of the innkeeper, and then the murder case of the owner's daughter is settled. But who is the Dark Knight who feeds on the maiden's blood? Where does Gogol's psychic talent come from? Why does he have a hideous face in the other world, and why does the detective come back from the dead? To get to the bottom of these secrets, stay tuned for Josie's Theory, the next episode of the Gogol trilogy, The Evil Spirit. That's the end of the story. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and follow. Josie will continue to work hard to show you more exciting content.